Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Talk radio for the thinking person, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Madness abounds in the land. Welcome to the Savage Nation. George Soros, after Brexit, says Merkel's open borders policy was not properly thought out. This is the son of a you-know-what. This is the evil, backstabbing, anti-American profiteer, George Soros, who pushed Merkel to have open borders with his Open Borders Institutes for years, and his puppet opened the borders, and now the world is falling apart. There are a couple other stories if you want to hear them. I don't know, it's July 4th. Many of you don't care. But I can't help it if you don't care. I have to ask a question, because I don't think anyone's even asked this question, not even John Brennan himself. What is it that ISIS wants? What is it that this terrorist organization wants? Has anyone stopped to ask what they want? Why are they willing to kill innocent people, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, atheist, gay, straight, black, white, Asian? Why are they willing to butcher and kill? What do they want? Well, you know what they want, which is world domination. They don't just want a swath of territory. They don't just want American troops and European troops to leave their homeland. That's not what they want. They live for domination. They want the entire world converted to their vicious, rabid form of Islam. They want you to live in the 7th century. They want the women to have hijabs. They want women not to drive. Do you have any idea how stupid liberal women really are? Do you have any idea that no matter how pretty they may look, no matter how intelligent they may sound, that they're actually dummies? They don't even know what ISIS is and what they want. Have you seen how many radical feminists, or lesbians, if you want to call them what they really are? Have you ever seen how many of them support the noble groups in the Middle East who are butchering and murdering women and don't have a word to say about them? There was a big gay parade here in San Francisco last week. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. They had a huge banner that said, "Stop Republican Homophobia." Not one word. This is after Orlando, where gays were mercilessly slaughtered by a Muslim fanatic. Not one banner saying, "Stop ISIS, stop Muslim hatred of gays." It was Republicans that they hated. See, I'm going to go in an area you don't expect. Many of you think it's about militarism, which it is to a certain extent, conquest, which it is to a certain extent, conversion, which it is to a certain extent, but it's also about the filthy pollution of the United States of America, the vermin in Hollywood and what they've done to the minds of the world. The filth that is churned out by Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg, my mythical figures in Hollywood, but they have real names, which are close to Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg. And these filth peddlers have so polluted the mind of the world that the traditional Muslim, whether they're here or they're far away, they're willing to die for it. They don't want their daughters becoming you-know-what. They don't want their sons becoming you-know-what. They don't want their world polluted by the psychosis of Hollywood. They're sick of it, and they're willing to die for it. Don't ever dismiss what I just said, because you'll never fight the enemy properly unless you understand that this is as much mental, spiritual, as it is physical. They're willing to die because in their minds the pollution of the West is worth dying to stop. No one will say that because the media, never forget that you take Fox News, as good as it can be at times, it's owned by a bigger corporation, News Corporation. News Corporation owns Fox Searchlight Films and God knows what else in Hollywood, so they control the movie business, they control the news business, the book business, the magazine business, so they're not going to have Fox News interfere with their movie business, are they? So you're never going to hear these ideas discussed on Fox News. And that's the danger of the interlocking corporate directorships that I've been trying to warn you about for years, which is interesting to me because I learned that in the 1960s from liberals, which was they said, watch out and look at the interlocking corporate directorships. And now that the interlocking corporate directorships are all controlled by radical leftists, suddenly you don't hear anything about interlocking corporate directorships, including the presidency, by the way, the CIA, the NSA, and the State Department. They're all part and parcel of Facebook, Yahoo, and Google, by the way. It's all one interlocking corporate directorship, in my opinion. And then we move over to Lurch, Kerry, and he pushes the narrative that ISIS is desperate following the Istanbul attack. I want to ask you, who's more desperate? Barack Obama, John Kerry, or ISIS? They seem to be doing quite well. They seem to be able to strike where they want and when they want. And we have a bunch of, I would use the word clowns, but this is not clownish. This is not clownish. This is incompetence. First of all, he uses a false acronym, DASH, so he doesn't have to use the acronym with ISIS in it or ISIL in it, because you'd have to say Islam. So now he invents a new word. Now DASH is the new word used by the morons in the State Department. Then he starts to whine that they have to get it right for 1 hour or 10 minutes, and we have to get it right 24/7. That's what you're paid for, you schmuck. Not to ride around in airplanes and make sure your suit looks good, you moron, you. Today is not a comedic show. Why is it not a comedic show? Because we're living in very sobering times. Where do we turn for leadership? Hillary Clinton? What's her answer? What is Hillary Clinton's answer to ISIS? I don't know. What is Donald Trump's answer to ISIS? I sort of know. He's going to waterboard? How would that have stopped the attack in Turkey? 41 or more killed, over 240 severely wounded by an ISIS attack. And what we have in the media is something approaching insanity. They're calling for an investigation of the crime scene. Morons on CNN and so-called professors of criminal justice are asking for a crime scene investigation. With all seriousness, if this is not insanity, I'd like to know what the definition of insanity is. And then on top of it, we have the genius in the White House saying that ISIS is losing ground. Then we have the genius in the State Department, John Kerry, pushing the narrative that ISIS is desperate following the Istanbul attack. I've never seen anything like this madness. If we had this kind of weak-kneed, I don't have any words for it, this kind of idiotic thinking in 1939, Hitler would have won World War II. We are losing the war against radical Islam because the genius in the White House will not even define the enemy by name, let alone fight the enemy. Do you understand the disconnection from reality of your president? Why the man is unfit at any speed to run anything? We want to make sure that we'll do the things necessary to make sure these kinds of terrible events aren't happening. While they're happening, the most corrupt president in history, corrupt now spiritually. I'm sure he's not pocketing any money. He's not the type that would want money. This man only wants power. That's all he lives for. There's various forms of corruption. Some, as you will see with senators and congressmen, congresswomen, live to steal money under the guise of various and sundry programs and contracts. That's one kind of corruption. And then there's a spiritual corruption, or if you want to put it, a mental or intellectual corruption. Obama suffers from the latter. He doesn't live in reality. He lives in a false reality, a false narrative of the world. And so he says that he wants to make sure that these kinds of events aren't happening while they're happening. You know, if there were war crimes trials after this radical leftist regime leads, Ashton Carter should be at the top of the list. This man should be tried for treason. Do you know what that slimy thing said? He said that your grandfather or your father rotting away in a VA hospital in a ward who is not being taken care of because of the vermin who run the military are going to be put at the back of the bus, and that transgenders will be given operations at your expense. You talk about insanity. Let me ask you, how do you define insanity? You know, one of the definitions of insanity is disorder, a disordered mind, the inability to prioritize what is important or what is unimportant. By that definition, Ashton Carter and Barack Obama belong in a madhouse. He is going to prioritize medical care for transgenders and put that over combat veterans who are waiting for treatment in the VA hospitals across America. This is what he does before July 4th. If this is not a punch in the guts to people who serve this country, tell me what worse he could do to them. Tell me what worse this slimy creature could do to them. Again, I'm going to have to remind you, because many of you are so, I don't have the right word. I think you're deadened. I think you're so deadened you don't even know what's going on, nor do you care. You've been beaten up so badly by this psychotic society of ours that you can't even understand what I'm saying to you. You've been so brainwashed since childhood that you don't know how bad this is. Nobody wants to discriminate against transgenders. How many are there? What percentage of them are there that they would twist the entire military around them? What's the percentage? 0.1%? So you twist the entire military around 0.1%. Well, by definition, we are witnessing the hijacking of a great institution, the U.S. military, who do not represent the U.S. military. They are like the jihadists who we are told have hijacked the great religion. We're always told it's not Islam, but a few crazies who have hijacked the great religion. That's over and over and over and over again. Well, by that definition, Barack Obama is one of these crazies who have hijacked one of the greatest assets of the United States of America, which is our military. It's what kept us free. It's what defeated Hitler. As I've written in my previous books, never forget it was every man who defeated Superman. It was your grandfather Eddie who died on Omaha Beach. It was your grandfather Eddie who died on Iwo Jima. And look what they died for, so this piece of garbage could destroy the U.S. military. Now, I could do this in a quieter tone, but it would have no effect on me. I need to get this out of my stomach because I'm ready to break the computer screen. I don't know what to do with my rage. I don't know where the outrage is in the country. Why must I be the last man standing? Why must I be screaming in the wilderness? Where the hell is everybody? They're certainly not in the military. Where are these generals? What happened to them? Where are all the generals who would defend us? The answer is nowhere. They're nowhere to be found. That's why we're losing the war against this ragtag army that doesn't even have an Air Force or a Navy. We can't beat them. Now you know why. Because the Army and the Navy, the Air Force, is twisted, mentally deranged. Mentally deranged. They're all looking over their shoulder, like in any major U.S. corporation. That's why corporations are broken. You think that they have cohesion in corporations? They don't. Every middle manager is looking over his shoulder, wondering when the axe will fall. Wondering when he'll wind up or she'll wind up walking in, and there'll be a carton waiting in the lobby for them of their personal possessions, and they're thrown out. It's the same in the military. Obama has destroyed the U.S. military in every branch of service. Not solely because of this. I can give you 15 other reasons. But I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you were a member of ISIS after you just bombed Istanbul, which, by the way, apparently the FBI is still investigating. They're sending a crack team of sickos over there from wherever they come from, with their rubber gloves, their DNA sampler. They'll be there for 6 months in Istanbul looking for DNA. We knew it was ISIS the first minute it happened. But the head of the FBI doesn't know who did it yet. They're going to investigate it and then get back to MSNBC with the report in 9 years. This is the country you're living in. I'll be right back.
Savage.
You're listening to Michael Savage. Coming up at 3, it's Mark Levin on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
So look, those are some of the topics. I realize it doesn't matter. You know, people die, and, you know, people die every day, and Gula's out, and the Ritalin's being supplied, and the Adderall is out there, and the parents are on their drugs and the children are on their meds and they're about to go on a summer vacation. Why do they care about what happened in Orlando? Do they even know what happened in Orlando? What percent of Americans do you think even know what happened and who committed the crime? The propaganda and cover-up by the media is so immediate. There's a Fareed Zakaria, for example, a bug, if I ever saw one. You look at his eyes, you know he's a bug job. From my point of view, the eyes say everything. I look at Zakaria, I see a mental case. Here's a guy who does a piece on CNN about how Islamophobia was created by Americans in World War II, and that there is no terrorism in Islam. It's only a small number of people within Islam who don't even know what Islam is. And this is passed for the truth on CNN every day. So how many really remember Orlando? They don't even know what Orlando is. You say Orlando, they think Disneyland. Is there any association in the American mind of Orlando and Islamic terror? Or is it still Orlando and Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck? They still see Mickey. You say Orlando, they see Mickey. And that's because they didn't want you to associate Orlando with the slaughter of innocents, especially tied to any particular religion or any particular creed or any particular country of origin. In that sense, we're all terrorists. Everyone's a terrorist. It's just a few people actually go ahead and do it. Yeah, okay, right. That's the way it is. Here's the headline. CAIR, C-A-I-R, the front group for Hamas. CAIR, the unindicted co-conspirator, well known to the old FBI, and I don't mean the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. I mean the FBI before Obama took over. CAIR put Michael Savage on their hit list. I read the list. I couldn't believe it was on this list. They call us all Islamophobia Network's outer core. Now, to me, this is something that I'm going to go to a lawyer for, because I'd like to know how I live in a country where those of us who are concerned about preventing the next terrorist attack and uncovering the Muslims amongst us who will kill us, how we have become the enemy to this questionable front group for Hamas. And so I wrote this. CAIR put me on their hit list. I said, read the following and ask yourself if CAIR is working for or against our national security. Ask why the Obama government permits these apologists for radicals to publish such hate lists, and why Obama and CAIR want me and others silenced or worse. And I linked to a jihadwatch.org article. It's astonishing. It says, in wake of Orlando massacre, Hamas-linked CAIR issues new Islamophobia report. So instead of talking about helping the government, as we've been told Muslims will do, get rid of the next terrorists, they're now singling out those of us who have been raising the alarm bells for years. But here are the names of the people that those in CAIR say are a threat to America because they're in the Islamophobia Network outer core. Adelson Family Foundation, Allegheny Foundation, American Center for Law and Justice, Christian Broadcasting Network, Concerned Women for America, Donors Capital Fund, Eagle Forum, Joyce and Donald Rumsfeld Foundation, Oak Initiative, Randolph Foundation. Have you gone to sleep yet? Really Big Coloring Books, Inc., Reclaiming America for Christ, Washington Times, and WND. This list, I believe, is the only list of valuable organizations in the United States of America. And this is a list of people and organizations that should be respected, not reviled.
Savage.
In a campaign, everyone calls the other one a liar. Everyone says they're going to do things they can't do. We know that. I'm a realist. I'm not a party apparatchik. I was never invited to the White House. I never had dinner with George Bush. I never voted along party lines. I've never registered as a Republican. I don't know if you know any of this stuff, but it's important to know. And I'm not comparing myself to others. You can check their own backgrounds. It doesn't matter what others do. All that matters is what I do. And I'm telling you that from my point of view as an American, concerned about my grandchild, concerned about the country that's been so good to my family, even though we've struggled from the minute my grandfather landed at Ellis Island. No one gave us anything. There was no secret handshake. There was no money waiting for him. He worked his heart out and died at 47. My father worked his heart out and died at 57. I've been working since I'm 5 years old because I choose to, not because I have to. In that sense, I want to make sure there's an America left. What Obama has done in the last 8 years is beyond comprehension to most of you. You would never accept that it actually is being done to you. And I think it all boils down to his hatred, both for the country, out of a sort of a malice that is borderline schizophrenic, if not outright insane. A country that's done so much for a man of such low character is hated by that very same man. Probably he hates the country for having bought his lies. I mean, I've read that analysis of others in the past. That anyone who would elect a man as such low quality to such a high place, he has to have contempt for such a country, thinking that they're stupid, to have fallen for his BS. So now, Trump says he's going to end amnesty and curb illegal immigration. And what is he going to do that for? He's going to use that money to help the poor in the inner cities get better jobs, meaning blacks, in plain English. Inner cities, as you know, is a code word. And he's trying to appeal to African-American people and saying, he's right, though. I don't know how anyone can't see this, but okay, that's another story, how they can't see it. How could bringing in millions of illegal aliens from Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, now Syria and Africa, how can that help poor people in inner cities? How is that even possible? Every black politician should be supporting Trump, by definition. But, of course, they're not, because the money is on the other side. He says he's going to make better trade deals and bring jobs back to the inner cities. I don't know if he can do that. I mean, you can make a better trade deal. I don't know if that's going to transfer to jobs. I know that in my neighborhood, which is not in an inner city, I live near a so-called inner city community called Marin City, which is just north of Sausalito. And I know there was a Best Buy there, and it lasted only a few years. And now it looks like Detroit. It's been boarded up. The county tried to force this corporation to put a Best Buy in this neighborhood, which they did. And for reasons you could well understand, it's now boarded up. The rest of the county is thriving. There's no other boarded up stores in the whole county. But down there, in that community, I think through pilferage and whatever, and then people were afraid to go down there, it's gone. There's nothing there. It's a boarded up warehouse. So I really don't know that doing better trade deals is going to change people's attitudes about what they're responsible for and what people have to do on their own. Do you want more Islamists in America? Do you want more anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-American immigrants, or do you want fewer? I mean, it's really, to me, it breaks down to that. So she's giving a speech in Raleigh, which, as expected, is ludicrous. We know all political speeches are ludicrous. Hers has risen to a new low, or shall I say fallen to a new low. She's going to tax the very corporations that made her and her husband worth $300 million. They started with nothing when they left the presidency. Now they're worth $300 million. The Clinton Foundation, the Clinton cash machine, as we well know, receives money from foreign donors, corporations, and here she's saying the rich need to be taxed more. Corporations can't evade taxes. The tax code is written to favor the rich. Who does she mean? Does she mean Google? Does she mean Microsoft? Does she mean Facebook? What does she mean the rich? Which corporations are not paying their fair share, Hillary? Because everyone I know is paying more than their fair share. So maybe you know some corporations that aren't, because I don't know any that aren't paying their fair share. I think they're the ones who support you and Harry Reid. They're the ones who support you and Nancy Pelosi. So she hasn't given a press conference with any questions for over 200 days. Over 200 days since the last press conference. Now she's giving a speech. So what can I say? Which side I'm on? You know which side I'm on. You know exactly which side I'm on. Is he perfect? No. Is he flawed? Yes. Does he have a bit of the Blondie in him? Yes. So what? So what? That's what we need in order to defeat our enemies. I told you that from my point of view, the most important issue is national security. Without national security, we're all dead, or we're slaves. Right now, we have Islamists running wild in the streets. We have Islamists running wild in the Obama administration. And Obama will be gone, hopefully, by the beginning of January. There'll be a new president. Hopefully it's Donald Trump. And he will release the terriers on the rats. He will release hundreds of terriers to catch the rats and snap them in their jaws. Do you know, when I say the Islamists are running in the streets, do you know what happened? Did you hear what happened, or didn't make it to Wolf Blitzer's earbud? Remember the Orlando murderer, the Muslim guy, whatever his name? I don't remember his last name, Mateen. I can't remember his name from 1 minute to the next. Remember the wife drove him to the shooting? You know the FBI doesn't know where she is? Can you believe what I just said to you? The FBI claims it does not know where Mateen's wife is, the Orlando shooter. How is that even possible? Did they let her go? Are they hiding her? Did they release her so she wouldn't be able to give out the fact that it was an ISIS plot? Where is she? How could they lose her? Well, Obama's running the country. That's how they lost her. So as I say, when Trump becomes president, I think that the terriers will be released and all the rats that are running wild in the streets and running wild in the government will be snapped up in a very short order. So that's why I'm voting for Trump. The rest is gravy as far as I'm concerned. And the best example of the insanity or derangement of this administration, and you do need to hear it, is the speech that Obama gave after Orlando calling for love. Not calling for war against ISIS and crushing them wherever they can be found, but love. He actually gave a Beatles speech. All we need is love, but it got worse. The new watchword from this deranged administration is love. So in his footsteps, there comes Al Sharpton Lynch in a speech that will have to go down in history as one of the most deranged, disconnected in political history. Listen to this soundbite about how to fight ISIS. Listen.
The message of Orlando goes far beyond one night of unspeakable terror. The message of Orlando that I have seen today and what the American people have seen is a message of determination to remove hatred and intolerance from our midst, to live our lives freely and without fear, and to stay true to the principles of liberty, justice, and equality that define America at our best. We stand with you to say that the good in this world far outweighs the evil, that our common humanity transcends our differences, and that our most effective response to terror and to hatred is compassion, it's unity, and it's love.
I'm speechless, and I'm in the business of speaking. This woman has weaponized stupidity. Loretta Lynch has weaponized stupidity and absurdity. There's almost no words to describe how incompetent she is. If she actually doesn't believe what she just said, she could hardly read the words written for her by someone more foolish than you could imagine. So let's try to put this in context for those of you who believe Loretta Lynch is qualified to be Attorney General, as much as Jay Johnson is qualified to be Department of Homeland Security's chief, as much as Obama was ever qualified to be president, because they're all connected. They were all appointed by him. He appointed those two people. She made a laughable statement that we should fight terror with love. So let's see. We go to the battlefield where we have our heroes on the battlefield, and we tell them not to shoot the enemy, but to put a flower in the edge of the end of their M4s, put a flower in their barrel, and go out and kiss an ISIS killer on the lips. What in the world do you think this will lead to? Do I have to put it in context for you? Do you realize if our troops in World War II had a Loretta Lynch or an Obama in power, they never could have gone to war and defeated Hitler's Germany? Do you know how severe that war was? Nah, what's the point of talking to you? Do you know what it's like to face an enemy in a schoolyard? Do you know what it's like to even face a schoolyard bully who wants to punch you in the nose, let alone somebody who wants to cut your throat and rape your wife and burn your village down? So, I mean, I could go on this all day long, and it's not going to make any difference, because I wrote this when I was 18, and I think it still holds true. Those who know will always know. Those who don't will never. Look at the faces of the dummies that Hillary Clinton picked to sit behind her during her idiotic speech just now in Raleigh, North Carolina. The dumbest looking people you could ever gather from the streets of America. It was 80, 90, 95% dumb white women, 2 white males who look like they're on medication, and a slew of black women waving flags saying this is Clinton country, etc. Is this her demographic? I'm afraid it is her demographic. Okay, so this is agitprop. We understand that that's the same for everyone who runs for office. There's no grist here. I get that. She takes tens of millions of dollars from corporations that evade taxes and says she wants to tax corporations. Trump, let's specifically look at him, says massive factories will come back, inner cities will be rebuilt. He says construction is what he knows, and wages will be going up along with new jobs. Trump says Clinton's open borders policies will drive down wages and get rid of even more jobs. Well, the question is, how could anyone who is African American or Hispanic and poor vote for Clinton when she wants to bring in millions and millions of workers to compete against them for low-wage jobs? Trump says he will change immigration rules to give unemployed Americans opportunities to get good jobs. Now, I don't know how he's going to do that. I don't understand how that's going to work, frankly. You change immigration rules to give unemployed Americans opportunities to get good jobs. You see, look, there's a problem with this rhetoric, and that is reality. I read of a Buddhist monk who said never argue with reality. When I'm facing a problem in my life that I can't work out of my head, I go back to that statement, never argue with reality. In other words, what is that reality? You just got fired? You can argue in your head all you want that you shouldn't have been fired, it was unfair, the person who did it was no good. But the reality is you were fired. Or, God forbid, you get a diagnosis that you have cancer. Don't argue with reality. Shouldn't have happened to you. It's unfair. God's no good. You better live with reality. Don't argue with reality. Go and get treatment. Well, it's the same with this statement by Donald Trump that he will change immigration rules to give unemployed Americans opportunities to get good jobs. Well, do they want to work? Are you telling me that the 50-some-odd% of bums in America who don't work are going to work? Have you driven around a city recently and seen all of the bums who don't work during the day? They don't work. Why would they work? All of a sudden you think they're going to take a low-wage job? I'll be right back.
Savage.
You're listening to Michael Savage. Coming up tomorrow morning from 5 to 9, it's the KSFO Morning Show on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
I'm a realist. So each morning I bicycle by a construction zone where these guys, they're all Mexicans or Central Americans. They look mainly like Mexicans. They're the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life, and they're strong. These are strong people. And they work from morning till dusk without complaining. They work from morning till it's dark without complaining. They built 5 houses in a row. Now they're building 4 new houses. And I've watched them dig the ditches. I've watched them lay the rebar. I've watched them pour the cement. I watched them fix the cement. From the beginning to the end, I've watched these men build these houses. Are you telling me that the poor in America are suddenly going to take jobs in construction if we bar illegal immigrants? Are you telling me that the poor in America who have grown up without working, who have grown up hating the country, who have grown up living on the government dole, are suddenly going to be able to get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and show up at a job site at 5:30 or 6, because most of these men commute for 2 hours and they don't complain about it. They can't live in the neighborhood. They commute for 2 hours, they show up at 6:30, and they break their backs all day long on a job site. Are you telling me that in America we're going to have people take those jobs if we stop bringing in illegal immigrants? No, they're not going to. This is the problem. I think we have a permanent welfare class in this country, and I don't see how you're ever going to make them work, personally. You could say all you want. They should work. They have to work. They will work if they have to work. You can say all you want. They're not going to work. They're not going to work. They're permanent wards of the state. So when Trump says he will change immigration rules to give unemployed Americans opportunities to get good jobs, it sounds good, but what unemployed Americans are going to take hard jobs? He vows to stand up to countries that cheat us on trade. Good, he can do that. In 2 previous books, I called for tariffs on Chinese goods. Common sense. This is how sane nations work. So if we had put tariffs on those television sets, then they would have competed on an equal playing field, and we'd still have our own domestic, manufacturing business. The same with many, many other industries. So trust me on economics. I know economics fairly well. I don't have to be a genius in the field to understand basic economics, which is protect your own people. Every country on earth protects its own industries. Every country on earth except America protects its own workers. Every country on earth has tariffs, so far as I know, on foreign manufactured goods that might threaten local manufacturing, except ours. So in that regard, it's really a simple fix, which is stand up to countries that cheat us on trade and hit them with tariffs. He then discusses tough ethics rules for the office of the Secretary of State. And boy, would that be necessary. Because we know that Hillary Clinton was the most corrupt, incompetent Secretary of State in history. Any other one would have been impeached or put in jail by now. And her greatest disaster, which is a worldwide disaster that everyone should know about, and the one thing that you should remember that makes her incompetent and therefore unqualified for this office, in my opinion, is the fact that she owns the Arab Spring. It's been forgotten.
Savage.